of the hay at the end. Well, good morning again. So glad you could be with us today. And those of you that were joining us on the Facebook live stream, if you'd like to join us on Zoom, just email unity@unityspiritualcenter.org and we'll be happy to send you the link. Now, since 1915, New Thought Sunday has been celebrated on the first Sunday of March. And today we're going to briefly look at the history of New Thought as well as the history of Unity. Now, Unity co-founders Charles and Myrtle Fillmore were leaders in the New Thought movement, which began in the mid-19th century with the teachings of Phineas Parkhurst Quimby, who's considered the father of New Thought. He, along with other pioneers like Mary Baker Eddy, Emma Curtis Hopkins, the Fillmores, Ernest Holmes, they all developed the New Thought movement. Now, Phineas Quimby was a native of Portland, Maine, and he was a clockmaker with very little traditional education. But much like Charles Fillmore, he had an inquiring mind and a lust for knowledge and learning. And like Myrtle Fillmore, he had tuberculosis and wasn't satisfied with the results he was getting from his treatments. So he did a lot of research and study, and he noticed that in a study conducted with some participants who were given medications and the others given a placebo, some of those who were taking the placebo had positive outcomes. So from all of these studies, he developed a theory that the mind has a direct influence on healing. And after observing the power of the mind to heal through hypnosis, suggestion, and the placebo effect, Quimby began a practice, a hypnosis practice, and developed the view that illness is a matter of the mind. He opened an office for mentally aided healing that's using the mind to help the healing. He opened a practice in Portland, Maine in 1859. Now we have to remember that scripture speaks about this when it comes to the mind. Romans 12:2 says, "Do not conform to the pattern of the world, but be ye transformed by the renewing of your mind." The renewing of the mind, that is constantly knowing that thought creates reality. That what we see, the patterns of the world, what we see out there is a reflection of what we are in here, but not to get fooled by what we see out there. Because within us is that depth, that energy, that divinity that shapes our thoughts and then what we manifest in the world. In the late 19th century, New Thought was propelled along by a number of spiritual thinkers and philosophers and emerged through a variety of religious denominations and churches, particularly Unity, which was established in 1888. And then again, the Church of Divine Science was established the following year. And then Science of Mind was established in 1927. Now, it's interesting that many of the early teachers and students were women. And many of the churches and their community centers were led by women. And that's true from the 1880s to today. Now, teacher and author Abel Adams summed up the New Thought movement in 1914 when he wrote, "New Thought is not, as many believe, a name or expression employed to define a fixed system of thought, philosophy, or religion, but a term used to convey the idea of growing or developing thought. It is an idealism that does not separate man from God or does not separate humanity from God." Now, what I love about that is that he says it's not a fixed system. And it's not, because it recognizes that consciousness is ever developing, ever evolving, that the mind is ever developing. And it's the system that knows there is no separation. Most traditional faith paths believe in duality, that God is something out there and we're here. New Thought does not. It does not separate humanity from God. Now, we all know Unity was founded by Charles and Myrtle Fillmore. Myrtle had contracted tuberculosis at a young age and spent a great part of her life seeking a cure. In 1886, she was very ill and thought that she couldn't do anything because she had been sick for so long. But then somebody told her about a New Thought lecture that was going on by Dr. E.B. Weeks. And Myrtle attended that lecture. And she left with a stronger faith in God and a new way to pray. She affirmed, I am a child of God, and therefore I do not inherit sickness. She believed that she could get better, and she did. And again, she knew, I am a child of God, therefore I do not inherit sickness. If we are totally of God and part of God, how could there be illness? In truth, there can't. In humanity, there can, because humanity doesn't understand or fully grasp and accept the oneness. So she fully recovered from her tuberculosis, and she attributed it to her prayer and other methods that she had learned from the lecture that she went to. She spoke healing, affirmative words to each of her cells in her body. She spoke healing and affirmative words to all her organs, to every part of her body. She asked for their forgiveness for ever having doubted them and for not seeing them as God. She affirmed that each cell was of God and contained God, and therefore she could not be ill. Now, Charles was firsthand witness to Myrtle's healing. And as a child, he had injured his hip in an accident when he was about 15, and it caused his leg to not grow properly. One leg was shorter than the other. And most of his life, he walked with a limp. But while he was recovering from that accident, he had a tutor who introduced him to the study of world religions, philosophies, existentialism. And he devoted his life to that later on in life. Charles followed Myrtle's lead and was impressed by both her recovery and his recovery. So he continued the study of world religions and philosophy and the links between religion and science. Charles loved science. And Charles and Myrtle both began to write about their beliefs and discoveries, about their healing, about their methods, about prayer. And they held meetings after church on Sunday. And it was their belief that these ideas and discussions were to be in addition to their normal Sunday service. But they had these prayer meetings. So much so, they were so involved in this new thought that Charles closed his business and focused entirely on publishing their discoveries. So he started publishing a new periodical called Modern Thought. And then 2 years later, Charles and Myrtle organized the prayer group that they would call, that would later be called Silent Unity. They didn't stop there, they kept going. And then the following year, they published their first issue of Unity magazine, which is still published today. Now, back then, one of the first contributors to that magazine was Emily Cady. And she published a series titled Lessons in Truth. And that material was later compiled and published in a book by the same name, which supported the groundbreaking work of the Unity movement. In fact, Lessons in Truth remains one of the foundational books of the Unity movement, and it's required in any type of certification or licensed Unity teacher or ministerial program. It's a foundation. With the publication of the magazine in 1889 and the movement Unity in 1891, the students wanted more organization. They wanted a program. And Charles Myrtle developed the first ministerial program. They were part of the first group to become ordained as Unity ministers in 1906. Now, initially, Charles and Myrtle did work from of Unity in a rented space near downtown Kansas City. But as the movement grew, they purchased land that would later become Unity Village, and still is Unity Village. Unity Village back then was a self-contained community. They were vegetarian, they had their own farms, they had their own printing establishment in the basement of some of the buildings, and they continued training ministers. Now, New Thought can trace its philosophy as far back as Plato, Aristotle, Emerson, and the Transcendentalists, and of course, Jesus. And Unity is one of the oldest churches considered part of the New Thought movement. And not only is it the oldest church of the New Thought movement, it remains the largest New Thought system today, with about 6 million members internationally. Another accomplishment of the Unity movement was the Unity magazine, We Wisdom. Now, We Wisdom was the longest active children's magazine in the United States. It was published from 1893 to 1991. Now, today there are still New Thought magazines, which include the Daily Word, Unity Magazine, and Unity booklets, but there's also the Church of Religious Science and Signs of Mind also have their monthly publications. Now, what's unique about New Thought centers is that there's no dogma. And followers believe that God or infinite intelligence, divine source, is everlasting and is all there is. And that all people are spiritual beings and divinity dwells within each person. New Thought followers believe that God is love and therefore we are love. And love is the highest spiritual principle that we can hold. We're called to love one another unconditionally. We're called to behold the Christ in each person. We also know that learning and that teaching and learning and healing one another comes from our mental states, that when we change our mind, we can change what we manifest. We know that thoughts held in mind produce after their kind. Now, Unity as a movement describes itself as positive, practical Christianity that teaches the effective daily application of the principles of truth taught and exemplified by Jesus Christ. And that's a direct quote from Unity. Now, we use the Bible as our main source of those teachings. Although we don't translate the Bible literally, we interpret it metaphysically. And we also believe that there are many other sacred texts where we receive inspiration and wisdom from. We believe that there exists one God, universal mind, creative, intelligent, divine mind, omnipresent. We see God as principle, not being. And we see God as an impersonal force that manifests itself personally, perfectly, and equally within all. We believe that God is present always, in all ways. Unity affirms and knows that Jesus was the human man that fully realized his divine nature, his Christ self. And that same Christ that is Jesus is each of us. Jesus is our elder brother and way shower. Jesus expressed his divine potential. And he sought to teach us and show us how to do the same. Jesus said, the Father and I are one. Jesus said, greater things than these shall you do. Meaning that we hold those same qualities and have the same potential that he did. Now, again, within unity or within New Thought, there's no dogma, no original sin, saint, no evil. What traditional Christianity calls sin, in unity, we say it's error thinking. Or we say it's mistakes due to the lack of awareness of one's true nature. That we are the Christ, that we are perfect, that we are love, that we are one with God. Now, salvation lies in the realization of oneness with the divine life force, divine mind, the absolute. And this is what unlocks our healing potential. So salvation is the expanding understanding of one's innate divinity and perfectibility through living the life demonstrated by Jesus. So there's no saving, as it were. It's the expanding understanding, the expanding consciousness to help us move through to the realization of oneness. Now, unity in most New Thought systems view sin as a separation from God, as the idea that we could ever be separate. And salvation is available and attainable in this life rather than the next. And salvation is the overcoming of physical and spiritual sickness and negative behavior. Heaven and hell are our places. Heaven and hell are states of mind. We can have peace always. We could be in heaven or be in hell based on our thoughts and our beliefs. We affirm the existence of eternal life, but we know that life is right now, in this moment, for us to experience. As I said in the beginning in our opening prayer, we are fully human and we are fully divine. And we integrate those two to live from our highest consciousness and the best self that we could be. New Thought believes that the mind is continually growing. So New Thought is not static. It's not a system of beliefs that can't change. It acknowledges the importance of traditional religious thought as part of the mind's development, but believes that the permanence of dogma is contradictory to the ability for the mind to develop and for the consciousness to develop and expand. We know that consciousness is ever expanding and changing. If it wasn't, we'd all be stagnant and there wouldn't be any development in any area of our lives. In fact, Charles Fillmore is quoted to say that he reserved the right to change his mind. Isn't that wonderful? What an affirmation to the continuing development and expansion of consciousness. Once we stick to something and believe that that is the only way, we stagnate ourselves. Again, the mind is always expanding. Divine ideas are ever present for us to receive, and consciousness is ever expanding. So if we really want to know what unity teaches, it's clearly listed in the 5 unity principles. God is source. There is no other enduring power. God is good and present everywhere, always, in all ways. We are spiritual beings created in the image and likeness of the Creator. And the Spirit of God lives within each of us. Therefore, all people are inherently good. We create our life experiences through our way of thinking, and there is power in affirmative prayer, which we know increases our connection to that divinity, to the absolute, to oneness. And we know that these spiritual principles, as much as we know them intellectually, we need to live them. We need to be them. We need to embody them and express them in our lives. In unity, prayer and meditation are the foundational practices for connecting to our true self, our true nature, that divinity that we are. And we help ourselves and others heal and grow and expand through prayer and meditation. Now, reading materials, listening to talks, and studying are also ways to change our thoughts so we can change our lives. They're ways to expand our consciousness. But it's practicing these principles that ground them within us. You know, even though it may seem simple, following Unity's philosophy is not easy. It involves commitment, responsibility, and growth. It takes practice, constant self-awareness, which some people are not thrilled to do because it requires embracing everything about ourselves, all our aspects, especially those things that we're not fond of. It requires owning every part of ourselves and allowing ourselves to look at that dark side, to look at our shadow, to embrace it, to forgive ourselves so that we can release them and we can foster change. And looking at and being totally honest about how we're functioning can be challenging. So it takes courage, it takes commitment to grow, to change, to expand, to release that which we no longer are. You know, Matthew 7, verses 13 to 14 says, "Go in through the narrow gate. The gate to destruction is wide, and the road that leads there is easy to follow." A lot of people go through the gate, but the gate to life is very narrow. The road that leads there is so hard to follow that only a few people can find it. And that's telling us that the gate is narrow, but we can do it. When we're committed, we can go through that and we can find our way. Now, who remembers the TV show Mission Impossible? If you do, you'll remember the words, "This is your mission should you choose to accept it." This is our mission. We're here to own and be and practice the unity principles, to know and live the truth we know. Our mission is to extend the love that we are, the love that is the only real thing that exists, to extend that to everyone and all living things, not just those we think that are right or those that think like us or those that do what we want. It's again to be fully human, but fully divine and integrate those two. To know that there is only love and everything we see is an expression of that love. That's our mission. And I ask you, do you choose to accept it? Okay. Now for our meditation, on Thursday and Friday, Thursday and yesterday, I had the incredible opportunity to participate in international gatherings for prayer and meditation for peace. It was incredible seeing people from around the world come together on Zoom with one intention, peace. There were over 1 million people in attendance yesterday for the silent minute. There were 500 of us on Zoom, and 500 was the limit. The rest was live streamed. And I was reminded of the incredible power present by collectively joining together in prayer and meditation. Now, the silent minute was an historic moment that began in the UK during World War II. The people of the United Kingdom would unite in meditation and consciously will peace. They did it at 9 o'clock every night. Big Ben would ring the bells and people would take a moment of silence. Now, what's interesting about that is that although Germany was skilled at breaking coded messages, they could not break the code that was being sent nightly at 9 o'clock. It's amazing, right? Well, the silent minute was reinstated after 9/11, and the silent minute is being reinstated now. It continues again, 9 o'clock every night, which is 4 o'clock Eastern time. And I invite you all to set an alarm every day at 4 o'clock. I already set one for every day at 4 o'clock on my phone so that I can practice that silent minute for peace. Now, one of the things that we spoke about on Thursday's meeting was the mantra of unification. So I'm going to recite that as our meditation today, share it with you. I've updated it to include all-inclusive gender terminology, but basically it's the same. It's translated, I believe, from Sanskrit. So we're going to do that, and then we're going to move into a silent moment for peace. It'll be longer than a minute, but as we move into this silence, I'm going to invite you to just focus on peace. So right now, I'd like to invite you to close your eyes and get comfortable in your seats as we move into meditation. Allow yourselves to be fully present in this moment. And allow yourselves to breathe in and breathe out. And as you do, you feel yourself relaxing more and more. You feel your breath slowing down with every breath you take. And you breathe at a comfortable pace for you. You let go and put aside any thoughts or concerns of the day. And you allow yourself to be present here now, remembering your humanity and remembering your divinity. Humanity is one. We seek to love, not hate. We seek to serve and not expect due service. We seek to heal, not hurt. Let pain bring due reward of light and love. Let the soul control the outer form and life and all events, and bring to light the love which underlies the happenings of the time. Let vision come and insight. Let the future stand revealed. Let inner union demonstrate and outer changes go. Let love prevail. Let all humans love. May peace be in Ukraine. May peace be in Russia. May peace prevail on earth. May peace prevail in the hearts of all living things. Let peace be. And now I invite you to focus on peace as you move deeper and deeper into the silence. I just realized I did the whole closing with the mics muted, so I apologize. So right now, in this very moment, we maintain the peace that we are, and we send that expression out to the world. We continue to pray for peace, for Russia, for the Ukraine, for the entire world. We acknowledge that we are peace, that we are both fully divine and fully human. And we move forward from this integrated place, extending our love and our peace to all those expressions of God. We acknowledge there is only one, and we commit to remembering and living from our oneness. Amen. And when you're ready, you can bring your consciousness back into your body, back into the room where you are. And when you're ready, you can open your eyes. Okay, so this is the time in our service where we have the opportunity to give. So I invite you to take your gifts and hold them in your hand. And just feel the love and peace that you are. Feel that energy, feel that vibration being infused in these gifts. We know that God is source and God consciousness is our supply. We know that we are an expression of that divinity, of that wholeness, of that oneness. And we share these gifts with our community and with the world. So I invite you now to bless these gifts with me as together. Divine love as me blesses and multiplies all that I choose to give and all that I'm open to receive, and I am grateful.
And our closing song, direct from Broadway,